our life are your wife, and people are grunts, back to front, and people are dreams, oh, so it seems, and I can't take them right now. I can't take them right now. Can't get out of my bed. There's a thought crime running through my head. Can't take these rules, and people are fools who believe what they read and believe what they see, believe what they see on the TV. Opinions are like iPhones. Everybody's got one. And narcissists are like broken hearts. Everybody knows one. Wipe them out. Wipe them out of my mind. 'Cause I can't take them right now. I can't take them right now. Believe what you read and believe what you see. Believe what you see on the TV. Don't believe them and don't believe me, I'm a tool. Line them up and school them. Give them the tools and they'll use them. Line them up and school them. Or give me a gun and I'll shoot them. Most people are nice, fundamentally nice. Believe in left and right. Believe it's wrong to fight. But they're still tools. Rubbers and fake news. A stain on your shoes. And I can't take them right now. Line them up and school them. Give them the tools and they'll use them. Line them up and school them. Or give me a gun and I'll shoot them. All the schools shitting out fools who believe what they read and believe what they see. Don't believe them and don't believe me, I'm a tool. I'm your changes of mood. I'm a drug in your food. Believe what you read and believe what you see on the TV. Don't believe them and don't believe me. Can't get out of my head. There's a thought tools, but I need them. I desperately need them.
Glass Onion. John Lennon.
Hello everybody and welcome to bonus episode 15 of Glass Onion on John Lennon, and this is actually the 119th edition of the podcast if you include both the regular episodes and the bonus episodes. This is a little bit of a diversion and a trip down memory lane, with your host being interviewed by a friend and fellow musician back in 2016. The song you just heard there was called The Fool's Guide, which used to be the theme tune of this podcast back in the early days. That was the full version that was recorded in Madrid in 2017, included on harmony vocals my interviewer James Jarman. Before we get to the main part of this episode, there's just a few bits of business. I hope you enjoyed the two-parter on Toronto 1969, and thanks for some of the nice comments and messages about those episodes. I'd like to quickly read one of the comments, in fact, that appeared on YouTube from the account Lewis4122. In relation to the discussion that my guest Dave Thurmeyer and I had towards the end of our talk, and it's something that we used to discuss quite regularly on the show, one of my stock questions to each new guest about the importance or otherwise of John Lennon in today's society. Lewis writes, "How relevant is John Lennon to today's times? Very relevant. He remains a distant reminder of how artists should be, critical and independent. Sadly, that's no longer the case. Today's artists in the music business are either part of the establishment or too afraid to speak out against it for fear of losing popularity. I don't hear any of today's artists speaking out on today's current issues, with a few exceptions such as Roger Waters or Eric Clapton. When they do comment, it's only from a mainstream point of view. John was iconic and unique. If he were around today and in his prime, I'm sure he'd be very vocal and speaking out." So thanks for that, Lewis. By the way, I apologise about my voice today. I've had a cold for the last 3 days and been powering through mostly on caffeine and paracetamol, but I don't know. If you like a husky voice, then you might like it. Another Lennon-related item I wanted to mention is that after considering doing it a few times recently, I finally went back and reread the Ray Coleman biography of John Lennon. Now, seasoned listeners of Glass Onion will know two things about this book. Number one, it was the book that started it all for me in my Lennon fandom. And number two, it was the subject of an ongoing quest to find the truth by comparing this quite sanitised view of John Lennon with the Albert Goldman biography that came out a few years later. Now, this Coleman book originally came out in 1984, and it was in two parts, John Winston Lennon and John Ono Lennon. And it quite neatly divided John's life into two parts. Obviously, the first part was with Cynthia, and he had a son called Julian, and then he was with Yoko in the second, not half exactly, but second part, and had a son called Sean. But the version of the book I actually read was just called Lennon, and it came out in 1992, and it had a 65-page intro called John Lennon for Sale, and which was quite different and refreshing in a way in tone from the original book. It was more cynical / realistic, and it was about the cash grab that was the 10 years following John Lennon's murder, and it also did seek to debunk a lot of Goldman's claims. And this is where the innocence sort of comes out, as Ray Coleman's quite aghast at the idea of John Lennon using cocaine, whereas anyone who knows anything about the music industry then and quite possibly now is that it's drowning in drugs like cocaine, drugs that stimulate and excite the nervous system, and to some degree aid productivity more in a nervous energy sense. Anyway, I went back and I read the book over about 10 days, and it's over 600 pages, but it's a very easy read and pretty enjoyable. And as I'm wont to do, I made a few notes thinking that I might talk about it on the show, as I'm doing right now. And I'll just read some of those notes. So this is a slightly revised and updated up to 1991 version of the book that started it all. It was quite a poignant experience to remember myself as a 14-year-old reading it the first time, and I tried to use those feelings to inspire myself to pick up the Lennon writing project again. There's quite a lot I'd forgotten, and the childhood part was quite Aunt Mimi heavy and with some fascinating details. I could certainly see once again the attraction of this wild character to my teenage self. Like John, I'd burned my academic bridges around the age of 20, but without a friend like Stu and a romantic partner like Sin, that's Cynthia, his first wife, to keep me afloat. On the musical side, I had Emlyn, that was Emlyn Foley, who I was in a duo with. He gets mentioned, not by name, but I talk about that later. And then Ian Hargist, who some of you will have heard of. But both of them were even less disciplined than Lennon, and I was missing a sensible and dynamic McCartney type. I found the style and tone of these early sections quite similar to the early days in the Hunter Davis authorised biography, which seems appropriate since Coleman's book has the feel of something officially sanctioned and appropriately non-controversial. It wasn't actually officially sanctioned, but it did get Cynthia and Yoko's approval. So it was approved, you could say. The young Lennon in Liverpool comes across as a legend in his own town before later becoming a global legend. The book doesn't follow a straight chronology, which makes it seem patchy. Yeah, it does jump about quite a bit. Also, the photos in the book, which are a little bit different from the original one, they're a bit random as well at times. The 1969 to 71 period is the strongest, and John was arguably at his most compelling then. The author was able to include lots of great quotes from that period, from interviews John did with Coleman himself, and most of Lennon's logic about the world was pretty sound. Coleman was close to John and so makes a few pro-Lennon generalisations about him and Paul. There's one I remember in the introduction that, the Beatles wouldn't have any creativity without John, or wouldn't have a conscience, or something like that. I did hear Mark Lewison on the Beatles Books podcast, very good Beatles podcast, talking about this book, and he called the book quite dull, and he also called Ray Coleman's Epstein book dull. And Erin Torkelson-Weber, who was on Glass Onion about 3 years ago, criticised its lack of critique of the Lennon Remembers interview. That's the Rolling Stone interview from 1970, and that's true. I mean, he takes absolutely as gospel the statements that John made in that interview. Just carrying on my notes, John's first eventful 4 years in America were dealt with in one long chapter. Elliot Mintz's views, unfortunately taken as gospel regarding the Lost Weekend and Lennon's apparently convenient rather than truly a romantic relationship with May Pang. Yes, Elliot Mintz has been a paid spokesman for Yoko and the official version of things. So yeah, he gets a lot of prominence in the American section. From 1975 onwards, it's the 1980 party line all the way, and the connection with 1985's John and Yoko, A Love Story TV film, is pretty clear, as well as the obvious one with the 1988 Imagine film. I remember at 14 being quite fascinated by the fact that John had gone from being a penniless art student scrounging money and fags from anyone he could, just for American listeners, fags mean cigarettes in British English, to having $150 million at the end of his life, with writing and recording royalties of more than $50,000 pouring in every day. And that's $1980 as well. That's pretty crazy. Yoko's explanation of how she had to start worshipping money and becoming materialistic in order to take over their finances, this was in 1975 when they apparently swapped roles, is pretty unconvincing, but the Lennons are well used to charges of hypocrisy, part of what angered Mark David Chapman, if you believe that particular story. John's idea was that if he showered Sean with gifts when he was very young, he would get it out of his system. On the other hand, logic would suggest that a child would be more likely to become conditioned to expect said luxuries. I'd say the book was full of interesting, uncontroversial details, such as the fact that, as well as wearing his old school tie, John in 1980 ordered Mimi, Aunt Mimi, to gather up various objects that had been in Mendips, that's the house in Liverpool that he grew up in, and have them ready for collection to be sent to him in New York. Yeah, this was amazing, this bit. He gave her a list of all the things that he wanted basically transplanted from the Liverpool home to the Dakota. At the time of the book, 1984, and possibly still today, the antique grandfather clock inscribed to Uncle George, that's the father figure that John had until he died when John was 14, and with which he taught John to tell the time, had pride of place telling the time in the Dakota. When I think of John, I always think of that long journey from Liverpool to New York with all the trials and tribulations in between. The full circle idea is so attractive, making the murder in terms of that narrative all the more poignant. To say that Coleman writes a flattering posthumous tribute is an understatement, but the final line, "A light went out on December 8th, 1980, but his music and spirit shine on," wasn't quite such a cliche back then. I'm so glad I reread the book and had lots of being tripped back to that first read, a mind-boggling 3.5 decades ago. The expanded chronology at the back of the book going up to August 1991 was quite interesting as I matched some dates to my young self growing up. Yeah, I had this weird thing. A few years ago, I found my exercise books from my primary school, and I was born in 1975, so I was quite fascinated to see if there was anything from 1980. Now, obviously, I wouldn't have written anything about John Lennon, but I was just curious to see whether I might have had an exercise book from December 1980, and it turns out I didn't. The ones I had were 81 and 82. So that was some of my thoughts on Coleman. If anyone's read the book recently or can remember it, or indeed Goldman, I'm always happy to hear comments from listeners because this ongoing quest to find the truth, which is clearly somewhere in the middle of this Coleman-Goldman continuum, it goes on and it's never going to really be solved if you think of it as a riddle. But that's maybe the fascinating thing about it. With all that said, just before I get to the main part of the show, if you'd like to help out the show, there are links in the show notes to buy me a coffee and PayPal, and thanks to those who have made donations. Otherwise, please share links and tell others about the podcast. Next show is going to be about John Lennon, the actor, or you might say John Lennon, the non-actor. That's something we might debate, whether John is actually doing any acting in some of the films he was in. I can tell you that my guest will be a real actor, a professional thespian, and we're going to dig into the finer points of acting itself and then assess John's merits. I suppose there's 3 main acting roles we're going to be looking at. They were filmed in 1964, 65 and 66, and you probably don't need me to tell you what they are, so I won't now, but we'll be getting into them in episode 103. There are a couple of TV appearances as well where he's arguably doing some acting, and I'm sure we'll find a few more angles. Right, finally, let's get to this interview. You'll hear the date of the recording at the beginning, but it's 8.5 years now. I've cut out some of the topical references. There are some very subtle references we have to some of our songs and other people's songs that I won't explain here, but I will just give you a little bit of background. So I lived in Madrid for 5.5 years, from 2014 to 19, and for most of that time I was outside of my working life as a teacher. I was a musician and part of a musicians and artistic circle that was a mixture of expats and locals, and it wasn't only musicians but writers, actors, photographers, artists in the specific sense, painters and so forth. It was a very heady time for all involved. If you'd like to learn a bit more about that, I actually did do an episode of Life and Life Only, one of my other podcasts, episode 19, where I talked about my experiences, and I read out something I'd written about creativity and communal experience and all the virtues of that. This musical circle or artistic circle was centred around an Irish pub called the Triskel Tavern, which had an open mic every Thursday, which often went into the early hours of Friday, where I met all these people, including James. So there are references to that, and James's former band, The Gines. There's a link to their music in the show notes. And an event called Mass, which was Madrid Artists and Songwriters Showcase, that was held every month and featured performances by various combinations of us, solo and with our bands. Now, in 2015, I decided to exercise my pre-podcast skills. This is 4 years before I started Glass Onion, and interview some of these musicians, including James Jarman. I think it was a series of 10, and then I did 2 more the following year, and then James ended up interviewing me, interviewing the interviewer, and we talked about music, creativity, and a few other things. Now, obviously, the Beatles will get a mention, almost goes without saying. And that's all I need to say, really. I mean, we're both Alan Partridge fans, so there's a bit of that flavour to it as well, and we always had good banter between us, so hopefully that comes out. I've added a few music clips from that time and slightly cheat on the last song because I did play it live in the park, but I broke a string and made a couple of mistakes, and there was also a bit of interference from the elements. It was a very windy day that day. So I used a recording that James also sang on, and there's also a little Easter egg live from Brighton Beach after the outro music of the podcast. There's no spoken outro to this episode, so I'm just going to say see you in about a month's time for the next one. And for now, enjoy.
This is an interview with Anthony Rotuno, the one you've all been waiting for. Let me set the scene. It's March 28th, 2016, the year of our Lord, and we're sitting upon a grassy knoll next to Madrid, Rio. Welcome.
Thank you.
We're looking very dapper with your glasses on. The same kind of sunglasses that an assassin, a sniper might wear. But what do you think about the shooting of Kennedy on the grassy knoll?
Are we going for this straight away?
Do you think it's a conspiracy theory, or do you think it is as we've been told?
I think we need a couple of hours to talk about this. I'll get back to you on that one. I think there were lots of unanswered questions.
Well, speaking of unanswered questions, I've got a whole plethora of questions here on my notes, which obviously I've got a memory like a broken sieve, so I've had to make some written notes.
Are these actually from people, or have you just made them
They
up?
are actually, yeah. What's happened
Okay.
is I sent out an email to thousands of people in the public and asked them what questions they would like to put to the Prime Minister, to Anthony Rotuno. For the sake of anonymity, I'm just going to say the first name of these people.
Okay.
So we've had one from an Abdel, who wants to know, how was your childhood? Did you spend much time with family?
Did I spend much time with family? Well, when I was in my mother's womb, we were very close. We spent 9 months having a very close relationship. Did I spend much time with them? Yeah, I didn't really have much choice. When you're a child, you don't get much.
They say when you're in the womb, if your mother plays songs, putting the microphone to her belly, or the lower regions, then the child will be influenced and inspired.
Yeah, I've got no idea if you played music. How was my childhood? I kind of had two childhoods, because I grew up, until I was about 9, I grew up in a sort of lower middle class town. It's a bit of a cliche, but it was literally a place where you could keep your back door open. Like, there was a lot of quite close community, everyone was looking out for each other, had grandparents nearby. It was kind of quite idyllic. And then when we were about 9, we moved to another town, which is, my dad got a better job, so we moved up in social status, but I immediately didn't like it as much because it seemed like the houses were much further away, and it was kind of reflected in the attitudes of the people. Everyone was a bit more private, and kind of felt a bit alienated from them. So actually, when I meditate, I sometimes find myself going back to my original town. Actually, a few weeks ago I was meditating and I could actually smell the disinfectant that used to be used at my primary school, which is quite strange.
Well, I'm glad
quite
you mentioned
evocative.
smell, actually, because we've got a question from a gentleman called Kester.
Oh.
I'm not going to tell you his surname for the sake of anonymity, but a young man called Kester has asked, how would you describe your music in terms of smell?
God. I think it smells of... Is that honestly from him?
I'll show you the text.
Okay. I'm going to be checking these later, because I think you've written these. Anyway, okay. I think some of them smell of plagiarism. But I'm not going to...
Smell Beatles-esque.
Yeah. Smell, that's a good question. Did he send any other ones?
He did, actually, yeah. He sent a second question.
Okay, go on
which
then.
is, if you could form a band from any musicians, living or dead, who would you choose and why?
And I've done this already. We've played this game many times.
Okay.
My fancy band would be John Lennon on rhythm guitar and vocals, Jimi Hendrix on lead guitar. Well, orchestra, because Kester's almost like Jimi Hendrix. So
Okay.
Jimi Hendrix orchestra on lead
If
guitar.
Jimmy can't make it, if Jimmy's got a prior arrangement.
Yeah. If Jimmy's over the age of 27. John Bonham on the drums. And I don't know if it'd work, but probably Flea on the bass.
Okay.
Because I've heard some of Flea's isolated bass tracks, and they are quite amazing. Because he can play bass, sound like a guitar, and sound like percussion at the same time. So
Impressive.
yeah. So 360s fellas plus Flea.
It's funny when you first said John Lennon on the guitar and vocals. I thought you were then going to say Paul McCartney on the bass, Ringo Starr on the drums.
That would have been easy, wouldn't it?
Tell me about your interest in the Beatles.
I don't know how I got into them. Well, obviously, like growing up in England, it's impossible not to hear Beatles music. No, I basically grew up in the 80s, and my early influences, although I wasn't playing music, it was 80s pop. And I can't deny that pop music still has an influence. It was stuff like Duran Duran and Tears for Fears and Spandau Ballet, if you remember any of those.
No.
New Romantic. I think they called them New Romantics.
No, I think that was before my time, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm quite a young man.
Okay. Not an old man.
No.
That was just a reference to one of your songs. Anyway, yeah, and then when I was about 13, I think, my older sister Marina, she brought this record called Collection of Beatles Oldies and Goldies, and it was a compilation they'd made of the first 4 years of their career. So it's sort of Love Me Do up to Eleanor Rigby.
Okay.
And all these songs in the 80s were kind of very self-conscious 4-minute pop songs with very long fade-outs, long intros as well. And self-conscious is the best word I can describe. And suddenly I heard all these songs, She Loves You, and they had the running times on them, and some of them were only 2 minutes.
Yeah.
She Loves You, From Me to You, amazing energy, even if they seem like crude songs. But then within 2 or 3 years, you've got Yesterday and Eleanor Rigby, and I couldn't believe it was the same band. And that just basically changed everything. And I was still into contemporary, like I got into bands like James or whatever when I was 16. But for a couple of years, it was just Beatles all the way. Yeah, that was the main thing. Just the energy, the craftsmanship, the combination of commercial appeal and critical appeal. I mean, it's, yeah.
Yeah, they ticked all the boxes.
Yeah, basically.
I was reading the news yesterday and read that Sir Paul McCartney is trying to get back the rights to the Beatles songs.
I see what you've done there. Yesterday he was getting back. I think he should just let it be. He's had a chance to buy them before.
Well, what do you think about intellectual property? Do you think it's irrelevant in this day and age, or do you have any strong feelings on
I think it's very relevant because yeah. Actually, the funny thing is we're all quite obsessed with property now. As we become less communal and more private, I think it's actually quite a good mirror of this sort of obsession with, this is mine, my property.
Yeah.
But I think there's another side to that of music publishing, is that you do get lots of money for doing nothing once a song has actually been written. Obviously the song takes effort, but I think he's pretty gutted that he lost his songs.
Yeah, he said it had spoiled his relationship with Michael Jackson, who had for a while owned all the rights.
I think there's definitely something in what he said. Something,
that's
yeah.
right.
And look, here comes the sun, look. It's been a bit rainy and the sun's actually arrived.
Okay, well, if
I think maybe he should, I hope he gets them back, because I think it's going to niggle him. It's going to niggle him forever, so I think he should. But him and Yoko Ono did have a joint bid, and I think it was kind of their own fault, because Paul McCartney has got more than £1 billion in assets, I think, and he's earning off all these musicals he owns and Buddy Holly's complete catalogue, so I think he needs to do it so he can rest. In the end, I think he will get them.
Okay. Well, it's gone very Alan Partridge all of a sudden with puns galore.
Yeah.
So let's move on to maybe another question from your listening public. And this is from a woman called Yaz.
Oh, yes.
Who asks, have you always worked this hard at your music, or is this something that's happened recently?
I did work hard when I was in my 20s. I worked pretty hard. But I played bass in quite a lot of albums. I never really felt confident to give my songs to a band, so I kind of had them as a sideline, and I used to play gigs under the name Eden Roberts. And basically over the last year, and I owe a lot to David Ernstberger, who's been very supportive, and Richard, actually, because Richard Harris, who runs the open mic, he said to me, why don't you play your own songs? And I said, well, I don't really like them. And he said, oh no, they're pretty good, you should play them. And then there was a time, must be about a year ago, when we used to go to Triskel, all the regulars used to go. And David, I said, oh, can you do something with this song? And it was that Perception Leader of the Fashion. And he put a harmonica part and a really nice harmony. And I suddenly thought, oh yeah, it's not bad. And yeah, since then, he organised a festival near the centre of Madrid.
I vaguely remember that, yeah, it was in the street, wasn't it?
And he said, oh, do you want to play like half an hour? And I got Kester, who we were talking about earlier, I said, oh, can you put a little bit of guitar on these? And him being very gracious, as he always is, said, yeah, sure.
She had lots of people hanging all around her. passion. I saw right through it all, but you never let me see what was going on inside of her at all. Friends in lots of too high places, I found nothing but the slightest bit of pride. She got the best of me, and all I did was love her. But in the end, I didn't know how to run her. I said, couldn't how to hide. Was the leader of the pleasure. Saw right through it all, but she never let me see what was going on inside of her at all.
And then we went to Kester's house to rehearse, and I'll cut a long story short. And I said, oh, can we do a little demo at your house? And he said, yeah, and we did a demo, and then we talked about doing an album. And then we've done 4 gigs with a band that's called the Backfield Plan now. And yeah, so probably the answer to that is no. I've never worked so hard on these songs. I've worked on other people's songs, but not these.
Well, it's funny to consider when it becomes hard work, and you know, is there an overlap between fun and work, or work and play? What's that famous expression? If you enjoy your job, you'll never work another day in your life.
Yeah, you're not working. Yeah.
Does it ever feel like a chore to you, or do you always enjoy playing?
I think you could. Well, there was once I did like a covers thing in London, and basically I did an open mic in Camden in London, and someone heard a cover. I think it was Stuck in the Middle, that one, Steelers Wheel, and they said, "Will you play a party? We'll give you." I think they gave me like £60 or something, and I played 2 hours, but it was all very kind of stereotypical covers, and I think that becomes work when you're not really into it. But I think the hard work's actually the dynamic between people. I'm sure you can attest to this with your affectionate but stormy relationship with Moez Khan that produced the great music with the Giants.
Well, yeah, Mo and I wrote some good stuff together. It was a great collaboration.
But joking aside, there was some tension which probably helped, right?
Yeah.
Did you say that?
Well, tell me about your work with Ian.
Okay. Never actually really wrote anything nose to nose.
Well, it's funny what constitutes partnership, isn't it? I mean, I think people do seldom write together. I think more often it's one person will bring some chords and another person will bring some lyrics and take it from there.
Yeah, and well, with Ian, he's written 100 or so songs, and like anyone, some are better than others, but I think he's got 15 or 20 that are really memorable, and they're quite deep songs because he's got quite a complicated personal history. We cover a couple of his songs, Backfield, Plan for a Year for a Day, and Call Me. I think he quite likes the fact that we cover those.
Has he heard the recordings then?
Oh, yeah, he liked them, yeah.
And I'm smoking in the moonshine. I knew I'd draw on the walls and make some top secret calls to people you wouldn't know. I'll count both books that I've read, and if I get out of bed, I've got some places to go. Is our evolution moving too slow? I read the dailies while you eat with your toes, and sold a ruby sequins to your iron or clothes now. So when I get me some cash, I'm gonna gonna buy us some hash and drag it all to the sea. First thing we'll steal is a boat. We'll go wherever we float and smoke as much as we need. But first I should be awake, and when I am you can shake me down and teach me to bleed. Oh yeah, and I know you're holding something I need. And I find safe ground to plant my torn feet. Oh, hit it.
Well, how many songs have you written?
How many songs
I know
have I written?
it's quite a lazy question that only a lazy interviewer would ask, but
I think somewhere between 25 and 26.
okay.
Yeah. No, probably
25 and a half.
Yeah, 25 now. I've obviously got fragments of ones as well, but there's only really 10 that I'm at all interested in.
Okay.
Which is similar to when I was interviewing everyone. I said, how many have you written? And they'd say 15, but they've actually written 40.
Yeah.
But I'm not interested in most of them. It's kind of like that.
Okay. The advantage of that is that one tends to play a greatest hits set if you leave out all the rubbish. You know, I mean, you've recently played a few sets, and you've played modern day classics like Wanna Go and Wish I Could See Her in the Day.
Yeah.
Have you got personal favourites?
Yeah, Butterfly Dreams, definitely.
Tell me about Butterfly Dreams.
Well, I like the groove of it, and there's a little bit of audience participation without milking it too much.
Clapping.
They kind of, as soon as the beats before the beats established, they clap a bit.
Yeah.
It's got this kind of really relentless driving thing that I really like. And I must say, actually, I was influenced by Abdul Dakil, who you talked about earlier, because I had this song pretty much in its form, but him with this kind of what's the thing he uses, loop pedal.
That's right.
He gets it, really keeps it going for a long time. So I've started getting a bit into that.
Okay.
But mainly it's just, I like the changes in it, and it's sort of based on a personal experience. So it's kind of about somebody else. Then at a certain point I kind of decided it was about a side of me that was holding me back. So I think when you personalise something, you play it with a bit more passion. And again, David, give him credit, he's got some really nice harmonies on that. So
Yeah,
that's
you
my
guys sound
favourite.
good together, definitely.
Yeah.
you've name-checked Abdul and a few other people, Richard and David and Kester. And these are all people that you know or met through the open mic circle. Would you like to talk about that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just like talking about those guys because I just think the pool of talent that I've seen in the last year, not everyone's still here, a lot of people are left. I mean, it's just ridiculous how many good players there are. Am I supposed to name one of yours?
That's the idea, yeah.
Okay, probably go for Hunger Games or El Chino de Arguelles because I like the juxtaposition between Christian's rapping and the other bits of the songs.
Ya que ahora solo tengo una certeza, que mi corazón sigue latiendo y esto es lo que más me pesa. Que creí tenerlo todo y no tenía nada, que mi alma estuvo llena y ahora vive cansada. No me mire con desprecio, señora, que aunque crea que merezco mi desdicha, puede que le llegue a usted la hora. Tenerlo todo y no tenía nada, que mi alma estuvo llena y ahora vive cansada. No me mire con desprecio, señora, que aunque crea que merezco mi desdicha, puede que le llegue a usted la hora. Para comer, pero un abrazo es lo que más añoro. Una mirada traviesa que no lleve a ninguna parte. He olvidado mi nombre, ya no sé dónde vivo. La ciudad acelera y yo aquí sigo perdido.
Kester's got a really nice song called Planting Stuff to Block the Neighbours Out, which is brilliant because it's incredibly English. It's based on a story that he heard about someone whose neighbour used to talk over the fence and have chats that the person didn't want to chat with him. But being sort of south of England and being far too polite, he grew a plant that eventually the plant would be, I've forgotten high enough, so it would shield him from the person who's trying to talk to him. So
it's a nice image.
That's a really good one.
Well, the folks next door are crazy and they're driving me insane, cause every conversation gets profanely more mundane. No, I don't mean to be cruel and I would hate to offend, but I can't wait for our relationship to end. They always watch me in the garden, pop a hair over the fence, and continue spouting on, but without making any sense. So I've begun to cultivate a plan I hope will soon fulfill the need for something to rid me of their ills. Now I've got they poke their head through, it's getting smaller every week. I'm counting down the hours till we never have to speak. But well, there's still some empty space. I may be pleasant to their face, but I've been planting stuff to block the neighbors out. Yeah, planting stuff to block the neighbors out. Well, they may comment on the progress, say the garden's looking great, seem a little bit surprised it's coming on at such a rate. But I've been putting in the work to remain so polite, and pretty soon I'll have them out of sight. Now I've got they poke their head through, it's getting smaller every week, and I'm counting down the hours till we never have to speak. But well, there's still some empty space. I may be pleasant to their face, but I've been planting stuff to block the neighbors out. Yeah, planting stuff to block the neighbors out.
It's a sort of melting pot of interesting, creative personalities. Yeah, there's occasionally tensions between people, but I think in the end people are fairly good friends and there's not too much trouble.
Okay, I asked around if anybody had any questions for you. One person who didn't reply was Danielle, who runs the Mass Night. And I think you'll agree there's been some great shows on Mass.
The Mass event has actually seen some quite interesting nights, hasn't it? Like there was that one in May with that gig by, what's their name?
The Kines, I think it was.
Yeah, the Giants. I think we all remember that gig, don't we?
What happened?
So there were a few sound issues at the beginning, and the lead singer, one of the lead singers of the Giants, Mo, was, as far as I remember, running between the stage and the sound booth and doing the sound. And then Christian, that we mentioned before, was rapping on his song China de Aguayas, and made this sudden move, and what did he do? Separated his shoulder or something? Dislocated his shoulder, and that was and then there was a sort of a few minutes of panic and people calling for ambulances. So I think that won the award for the most surreal gig of 2015. But the music was very good. So
yeah, it was a fun night. I was there.
Fun. Yeah, I think pretty much everyone that we've talked about has contributed in some way to Mass. So it's a good monthly get together.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Can't really argue with having 3 bands in one bill.
Absolutely.
Apparently there wasn't this many gigs before, but now it's a bit crazy. But I think generally, would you agree, you have to space it out a little bit, because unless you radically change your set every time, which most people don't, because it's also good when people get to know your songs.
Yeah, that's right, you can sing along.
So people wouldn't vary their sets too much. If you see them too often, then it's, I don't know, I guess you can't.
Well, I'm sick of my songs. Have you ever sung in a church, a synagogue, or a mosque? And why did you choose that particular religion to patronize?
Who's this from?
This is from me.
Okay. Well, I actually started playing in church. I was brought up as a Catholic, went to a Catholic primary school, with all the joys that entails. No, when I was about maybe 14, I think I just got a guitar. I borrowed a guitar from a fellow at my school. And we used to go to Mass, different Mass, on Sunday mornings. And it was the usual sort of mournful organ, the usual hymns, kind of a bit dour and downbeat. Yeah. And then one day, for whatever reason, we couldn't go in the mornings. We went to a different church on a Sunday afternoon. And instead of the organ, they had this woman in a kind of checked, vaguely country and western shirt, long hair, centre parted, playing with an acoustic guitar, playing upbeat versions of all these songs. That was quite a pivotal thing, because I only thought, yeah, I'd like to do that. That sounds good. So I got myself an acoustic guitar eventually. I'm actually left-handed, but when I first got it, it was very difficult. This is back in the 40s. It was difficult to get a left-handed guitar.
Back in the 1940s?
Yeah, back in the 40s. Just in the post-war days. It was difficult to get left-handed guitars. So I started right-handed, and then after 2 weeks, my mum managed to track down a left-handed guitar. But I thought, I played for 2 weeks, destroyed my hands already. I'm not going to go back and start again, so I carried on right-handed. But myself and a friend of mine who plays keyboards, we got ourselves a gig at the church playing the hymns during the service, and then after the service they had a little hall where everyone went for coffee, and we played a couple of our own songs, which were fairly bad, but they were our songs.
Were those songs about Jesus, or were
they weren't
heathen music?
No, neither really. They were just happened to be a church hall that allowed us to play.
And why did you choose the Christian religion rather than going to a mosque or a synagogue? Is it because you hate Islam and Judaism?
I think it's because I didn't have any choice. I wasn't brought up as a Jew or a Muslim.
Okay.
I was brought up as a Catholic. Now I'm somewhere beyond a lapsed Catholic. I don't know what the next level is from lapsed.
Going to hell, basically.
Yeah, going to hell.
Okay.
I do have this theory that wouldn't necessarily refer to me particularly, but if a child has an independent spirit, in any time that you try and restrain them or you try and tell them what to believe or whatever, it's just going to push them further in the other direction, which would probably be good for their art but not good for their lives, I think.
Yeah.
And I think there are certain examples of that I could name, but I won't.
Okay. Do you get tired when you're stressed?
Who's that from?
That was a question you once asked me.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Tired when I'm stressed or stressed when I'm tired?
I think it was tired when I'm stressed, yeah.
No, I think when I'm stressed I get a big adrenaline rush that goes the other way, but it's a sort of nervous, out-of-control energy. I get tired when I'm nervous. Right. How about that?
Oh, that was it.
I think that was the one, yeah. I remember the first time I ever played properly with a band was in Leicester, which is in the Midlands in England. And I was feeling absolutely fine, and then about 15 minutes before we went on, I could feel my hands start shaking. And I suddenly felt that I wanted to immediately go home and sit on the sofa and watch a film or
Sounds
something.
like a panic attack.
Well, it wasn't that bad, but it was just a kind of, the tiredness definitely comes from nerves. And then you get this funny mixture of physical tiredness, but nervous energy, and then it gets a bit confusing. But I think the way I got over nerves playing music was to do things which are far more difficult, like acting in a Shakespeare play and doing stand-up comedy, which I did very briefly. And after that, playing music just doesn't seem very difficult, so I don't really get nervous anymore. Occasionally. Have you got anyone from others?
I've got a few more questions, yeah. So do you want? I'll ask you all the questions from the public back to back.
Okay.
In a kind of quick fire round.
But I mean, it's quite difficult to say how was your childhood in a quick fire way.
That's true, yeah. Okay, so I've got a message here. I'm going to keep this anonymous, though. I'm not going to tell you the surnames.
Okay.
So don't reveal if in case you do recognise anything. This one's from an Owen, but it's spelled EOGHAN.
Yeah.
And he says, "Who amongst your travelled men do you look to for inspiration?"
What does travelled men mean?
I think he means
who among your travelled men?
Which expats or immigrants
expats,
are you inspired by?
Who am I inspired by? Musically or otherwise?
Oh, well, he didn't specify, so I suppose you can...
I mean, musically, any of those people that I've already mentioned, they're all inspired me in different ways. Right. Inspired me as a person. Oh, well, when I interviewed Castor, we talked about energies at one point. I think he was a bit surprised that we went from talking about his musical roots to suddenly talking about energies. But energies is something I'm very interested in. And he has a remarkably steady energy, whereas mine just goes up and down like crazy. So I wouldn't say he's like directly influenced me, but being around someone who's quite calm, it kind of
stabilizing
in
influence.
A funny way teaches me to be a bit calmer, and just anyone really. I remember, if you don't mind.
No, that's quite all right. Yeah.
Another one. I'm very interested in these sort of seminal moments of your life, and when I watched a documentary about Jimi Hendrix, and in amongst all the stuff about what a genius he was, his manager said that one thing he noticed about Jimmy was that they used to go and watch local bands in London, which is something I used to do. I like walking into a pub and just seeing a random band. And he said that Jimmy would always find something that was memorable, even if it was a really shit band. There's just one thing. He'd always come out and say, "Oh, did you notice the way that guy guitarist did that?" And I think you can use that in your life. If you look around yourself everywhere, you can always see something that you can put in the memory bank. So I think just being around creative people, I can't really think of any specifics, but they all influence me in various ways. Maybe the way they live their lives. I think being in Spain, actually, I've been inspired not to arrive on time, which I don't know is a good thing or not. But to be more relaxed about time.
Okay, yeah, it's contagious. Well, I've got another question here. This is from a Trevor, spelled Treffor.
Why do all these people keep spelling their names in funny ways?
I'm not sure. But anyway, he has asked, at what stage did you begin to crave people's attention? Smiley face, please don't tell him that.
Okay. Can I answer that in a broad way, or does it have to be specifically about me?
As broad as you like.
Well, I think it's fair to say that people who turn to creative endeavours may well be generally craving attention. I think what I'm actually craving is connection more than attention. Because one of the things that really bugs me about life in general is the way that people don't say what they're thinking. And I understand that, if someone just went around saying everything they're thinking, they would probably immediately alienate everyone, because we probably have thoughts that we don't really want anyone to know about, which is fine. But I think really music is just a way of connecting, where there's certain people that I know where musically I connect with them, but maybe verbally I don't. So I think it's more connection than attention. No, I mean, it's nice. I think everyone likes attention, really.
Everyone likes connection as well.
Yeah. So I would say it's that. Good question.
It was a good question. And Trevor asked another question. Which is your most creative finger?
I'd say probably the middle one, for a myriad of reasons.
Got a question here from a Zoe.
Zoe, right? Yep.
And she asks, where do your songs sound better? In the bathroom or the living room?
Bathroom or the living room? Bathroom's like churches as well, they have that wonderful built-in echo. And of course the famous Beatles story, just happened to mention that. They used to actually rehearse in the bathroom.
For the acoustics.
For the acoustics, yeah. So definitely 100% bathroom.
Okay. We've got a question here from Chisara, who says, what does music mean to you?
Is that Chisara Smith?
I think that's Chisara Smith. Yeah.
What does music mean to you? I mean, just creativity and, as we said before, connection, communication, really. There are other added benefits, obviously. You know, there are shallow pleasures involved with playing music, and there are deeper things.
A woman called Julianne has written to me asking, what are you afraid of in regards to making music, and how do you deal with such fears?
Well, my biggest fear generally is technical things like breaking strings during gigs and guitar straps coming off, that kind of thing. That makes me far more fearful than actually the music. But there are times when I'm in a bad mood or I'm tired or whatever that I start to think all my songs are rubbish. So it's probably a bit of self-loathing about the music and things. That's probably my biggest fear. I suppose the feeling that you won't ever have anything else to express, which hopefully won't come. They're probably my biggest fear. How do I deal with them? I mean, just try and not think about it too much, really. I think thinking about music's, it's a bit like, what was that thing you were saying?
Well, somebody
dancing about
That's right. Somebody said writing about music is like dancing about architecture.
Yeah. I think thinking about music too much is a bit like that as well.
Okay. Well, if you could do a dance about any one of your favourite buildings, what kind of dance would it be? Maybe a ballet kind of thing, or a free-form dance?
I quite like to do a sort of dance where I start from a height and crumble to the ground, rather than like World Trade Center Building 7 that you may have seen. And I posted something today because there are actually people in the world who are crazy enough to think that World Trade Center 7 may have come down as a controlled demolition. And I posted a side-by-side video of two buildings crumbling in exactly the same way, with a sarcastic message that some people...
So you don't think the American government had anything to do with 9/11?
Well, again, I mean, like JFK, we probably need a bit more time than a quick-fire answer there. But
tell me your thoughts on recording.
I've always liked the idea of recording because I think recording and live performance exist beautifully apart from each other. Much like film, I've always been a film buff. The idea that you can have a finished work and that you can keep playing it back without having to keep performing it all the time. To have something in the can, so to speak. Again, obviously, to mention the Beatles again, I listened to their recordings non-stop from about the age of 16 to about 19 or 20. And I got so much out of it. It's been such a huge influence. The idea of packing songs full of value, so having each verse not quite the same as the other one.
Well, that was partly down to the fifth Beatle, wasn't it?
Who's
George
that?
Martin.
George Martin, who recently died, My thoughts on actually doing recordings have changed slightly because the album, it's got enjoyable moments, but to be honest, I'm quite looking forward to finishing it because it's a bit of an ongoing process, and because my playing is a little bit sloppy depending on the instruments that I don't have a chance to practice on, like piano or bass. It's quite a long drawn out process.
Are you a perfectionist when it comes to recording?
Well, no, I think my producer Kester, who mentioned earlier, is a perfectionist, which I totally appreciate. He doesn't let me get away with anything, which is good because in the end I think we will have a fairly decent finished product.
Let's talk about your songs a little bit. One of my current favourites is The Day. It's very dark, kind of grungy sounding. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
And what's the topic?
The topic is mental illness or mental health, depending which way you look at it. Now, the guy we mentioned earlier, Ian, he had a song called 5 Summers, which is totally his song. I had nothing to do with it. But I started playing it live because I really liked it, and I tagged a verse to the end of it, which in the end I think he got me to remove it, but that's another story. And it wasn't necessarily autobiographical, but it's about when someone leaves you even though they have great affection for you because you're too messed up for whatever reason. So the lyrics were, the day has come, the day we can never escape. When I'm too far gone and you'll go when you'd much rather stay, which is kind of the key thing. It's like the inevitable breakup, even when you actually, big part of you wants to stay. And you're moving on while I'm stuck in the same lonely spot, and the time is right when you leave me and I lose the plot. So I had that, and then technique I developed recently is to set the recorder going, the one we're recording on now, and just start with a few lyrics and play with them, and then just sort of freeform, see how things go, and then have it recorded and then play it back and pick out the good bits.
It's a good way to work, I think, because any musician will know that whenever you're playing or jamming with other people, you always have a moment where you say, oh, were we recording that? Oh, that was so good. What did you just do? What did you just sing, you know? So it's great to just have the recorder on surreptitiously in the background, recording people. Because if you tell them you're recording them, then they'll act differently, won't they?
Sort of reality TV what kind of works in that way. But yeah, with the day, and then I finished it, I had some hypnosis sessions last year. The therapist is a sort of Americanized Indian, not an American Indian, not a Native American, an Indian who got Americanized citizenship, if that makes sense. And we'd have long chats during and after the sessions. And he didn't necessarily inspire anything directly, but we were talking about the pointlessness of regrets and things like that. So I got the lyrics to turn back the clock is an impossibility, turn back the clock is beyond our ability, and just finished that song off really. It's quite good. We've got a nice recording of it. It's going to be one of the highlights of the album, hopefully.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'd love it if you could play that for me later. Speaking of which, we're coming towards the end of the questions that I've received from the public. A chap called Christian asked, is there anything that you know that other people don't know? Could you share with us your insights?
Is there anything I know that other people don't know? Oh, God.
Maybe some secrets or...
Oh, is this a reference to the other week when I was going around telling people I had secret knowledge?
I think that might be what he was talking
about.
Oh,
right, okay. Well, obviously there's personal things about myself that I know and no one's ever going to know, so...
Yeah, and then, I think you have a slight low-key side to your personality, you know, a trickster, kind of, you know, a fiendish, Schadenfreude.
I laugh at my own misfortune as well. I don't know, I've always had I would say again, like some of the people we've met over the last year, there's people that seem to have a slightly different way about them or a different view of the world or a different perspective.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I gradually got very short-sighted and eventually had to wear glasses and then got laser treatment in the end. But one thing I used to enjoy doing was actually going out into town without wearing my glasses, so I couldn't see anything. And I could see right in front of me, and I used to find it very liberating. So I actually spent a lot of time basically being short-sighted. And I read, again, years later, reading a John Lennon biography, I found out that he used to do the same thing, because he didn't want to wear glasses because of his image. And there are a couple of other people, famous people, that have done that.
I did the same last week, actually, but it was because I'd lost my glasses. I was looking everywhere with my glasses gone. Ended up just walking around with no glasses on. And it wasn't very liberating.
I don't know, I've always had a slightly different perspective, and again, I know other people who do as well, so I don't think I know anything in particular. Although I have researched quite a lot about how the world works, so...
Well, maybe you can offer some advice to a friend of mine, Rosalie, who asks, when do you know it's the right time to quit a band?
All right. I think to be in a band, you have to have a decent mix of personalities, because I think this sort of combustible thing, which can often create great art, I think in the end it's destructive. So I think when it becomes hard work, because I'm like you, if I'm not going to make money off music, I don't really want it to be stressful as well. So I think the point where it becomes hard work, or the point where you really don't want to be with these people.
And here's a question from Stuart Stamps, who says, when was the first time you ever sang in front of a stranger, and what was the reaction?
Well, that would have been that church hall I was talking about earlier. I think the reaction was a sort of polite ripple of applause, the kind of thing you'd see at an uninspiring cricket match.
Well, you say it was a Catholic church. Do you think the response might have been different if you played in a Protestant church, or maybe a gospel church?
Well, that would have been pretty good. quite like to have grown
Baptist.
up on gospel music. I don't know, no. I think it was just a polite... They didn't really understand the music, man. They didn't understand those two chords being repeated over and over again. But, polite ripple of applause.
Okay. Well, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you wish I had asked you? Or any questions that the public haven't asked, which you're disappointed that they neglected to mention?
Well, you could talk about how much fun it was playing bass in the backfield plan.
It was a lot of fun playing bass in the backfield plan. I'm really, I was grateful and flattered that you invited me to play.
No, that band is actually my attempt to emulate the Plastic Ono band.
Oh, right.
It's yet another attempt for me to emulate John Lennon. The idea is that it's not necessarily a concrete band as such. I can't imagine us having a website and all that kind of thing. The core is probably David Kester and myself. And then we've done 4 gigs. Christian's played all of them, but now Christian's going off for surgery. So I won't tell you who the drummer's going to be. It'll be a nice surprise.
Okay. I think I can guess.
Well, you could, but you're not going to. It might be Rosalie, because she's the drummer, isn't she?
Right, yeah. Well, she might be free if she quits her band.
Yeah.
If she takes your advice.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the idea that it's just sort of revolving band.
One of the real pleasures of playing music is getting into that feeling of the flow, or being in the zone, where you're just lost in the music and you forget about everything else. Have you ever experienced that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like a musical orgasm almost.
Maybe.
You suddenly forget all your troubles and you're completely into it. Yeah, it's happened a couple of times. I used to have a regular covers gig. I used to like playing Radiohead songs. And there was a period where I used to play 3 of their songs in a row, and I don't remember exactly what they were. One of them was Street Spirit, probably Fake Plastic Trees, but I don't remember the other one. And I think it was like an evening. I was a bit tired and I was a bit slightly sleepy, and I played their songs and really went into a kind of trance because of the nature of the music and the place where I was playing. And then recently playing that song Wanna Go, having Carol, my good friend Carol Mosley, and David as well, having my friends singing with me and having these lovely harmonies.
It's nice to harmonise, isn't it? Do you think the relationship that you have with people affects the quality of the harmonies?
Well, yeah, it's absolutely a theory I have. Somewhat broken by some artists who seem to hate each other but can still harmonise, like Simon and Garfunkel. But yeah, definitely. I think when you have a good relationship, particularly quite a deep relationship with people, it does come out in the harmonies, yeah. Because it just feels more natural. So when I sing that song Wanna Go with my friends, I do get quite emotional about it.
It's a great song.
Shut my eyes and go into a trance. Well, that was actually the first song I ever finished when I was 16. And some would say I've gone downhill ever since.
Well, I wanted to finish with giving you some uncle-like advice.
Okay.
And say, don't give up your day job.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about quitting your job?
Well, I've still got time. I'd quite like to reduce my hours, because this year I have started to lose some impetus with teaching.
Yeah.
You know, I've been teaching for 12 years and I've taught most of the exams and most of the levels and things like that. So I'd like to find an outlet to make a bit of money so I can still teach but reduce my hours and have a bit more energy to do other things.
Okay.
So yeah, probably say that.
Well, thanks for talking with me today. Would you like to play a song now?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What are you going to play for us?
Well, I think you're going to tell me what to play, aren't you?
I'd like to hear one of those songs that you played in church on that very first day.
Okay, this is Give Me Joy in My Heart, Keep Me Resting. Which one would you...
I think I'd like to hear The Day, if you would be so kind as to play that for me.
Okay.
Should we keep it running while you get the guitar out?
Yeah. Why not?
This is The Day.
Okay.
By Anthony Rotuno. Take 1.
This is going to be the only take.
far gone, and you go when you'd much rather stay. And you're moving on, while I'm stuck in the same lonely spot. And the time is right when you leave me and I lose the plot. Well, I dream of a time, as I've often said, when I'm flying away from fear. And I know in my heart, and a wise man said, that the truth is always near. To dream a dream the night before, it's something I've never done before. To build it up and get knocked down, you're above me and I'm so down. You're over there and I'm over here. My mind has never known such fear, that you leave me and I lose the plot. And I'm stuck in the same lonely spot.
was a string breaking in the middle of that. Hope you enjoyed that.
And if you've enjoyed this interview, you might be interested to listen to one of the 10 interviews that Anthony did with some of the musicians from the Madrid open mic, expats and others circle. Mm-hmm. You can click on the links provided below.
Yeah, there's interviews with some lovely people.
Yeah, so shall we wrap it up?
Yeah, also we've got some exciting news that we're actually going to be doing this every day from now on. It's going to be a daily interview, everybody.
Yeah, it does feel a bit like Groundhog Day.
See if you can handle it.
We could have quite an interesting idea. We could take the best parts from today's interview, the best part from yesterday's interview, blend them together somehow.
Yesterday, I don't know what you mean. What are you talking about, man?
You know, I mean, obviously the bird squawking would be a bit of a giveaway.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time, Anthony.
You're welcome.
I think you've been fairly good interviewee. I'm going to give you 7 out of 10.
Okay. And I'm going to reverse the normal cliche and say, let's not do this again, because I haven't got anything else to say. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Take this, brother. May it serve you well.
I'm an old man, but I look quite young. I'm an old man, haven't lived very long. I'm an old man, back vocals, getting lyrics wrong. I'm an old man, singing old man songs. I'm an old man, whoa. I'm an old man, I put my dog to sleep. I'm an old man, and it wasn't cheap. I'm an old man, watching Teabag steep. I'm an old man, watching widows weep. I'm an old man, whoa. And what you sow you reap. And everything I've been and done was in vain. I don't know how much longer I can take this pain. I'm an old man, don't give up your seat. I'm an old man, help me cross the street. I'm an old man, would you like a sweet? I'm an old man, how about that seed? I'm an old man, whoa, waiting for my lead. I'm an old man, all I think about is dying. As a young man, all I thought about was gying. and I'm old man, gonna take my time. I'm an old man, yeah, but I'll take mine. An old man, whoa, in the post office fly.